Clara James. His hand trembled as she stared at her phone screen, the unknown number still flashing. She hadn't meant to answer it. She never answered unknown calls, but she'd been expecting news about her job application all week, and desperation had overridden caution. Now the deep voice on the other end of the line had her frozen in place, standing in the middle of her tiny apartment kitchen, with breakfast burning on the stove. Miss Lane. Hello? Are you there? Is this ultrasound really yours? The voice was authoritative, clearly accustomed to being obeyed. Clara James opened her mouth to correct him, to explain he had the wrong number, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way her life had been falling apart lately, fired from her administrative position at Meridian Healthcare, after budget cuts 3 months behind on rent and the growing pile of medical bills from her mother. Laura Anderson saw cancer treatments sitting on her counter. Or maybe it was just curiosity about what kind of person sent ultrasound images to their boss. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? She managed buying time while her mind raced. The ultrasound image you emailed me last night. Is it really yours? Miss Lane. The man sounded impatient now, but there was something else in his tone. Concern, perhaps. Clara James. His eggs were now completely charred, the smell filling her small kitchen, but she couldn't move. I think there's been some misunderstanding, she began carefully. Look. Sophie, if you sent this to gain my sympathy for more time off, we need to have a serious conversation. But if it's legitimate... He paused and... Clara James heard him take a deep breath. If it's legitimate, then we need to talk about your options and how the company can support you. Sophie Lane. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Clara James. Tried to place it, as she finally moved to turn off the stove, scraping her ruined breakfast into the trash. Then it clicked. Sophie Lane had been in HR at Meridian, the same company that had laid Clara James off. They'd never been close. But Clara James remembered her as kind during the exit interview, apologizing profusely for the company's decision. This is not Sophie. Clara James finally said, her voice stronger now. You have the wrong number. Silence stretched for several seconds before the man spoke again. I apologize for the confusion. May I ask who I'm speaking with? Clara James, former administrative assistant at Meridian Healthcare. She hadn't meant to add that last part, but something about his voice, commanding yet somehow warm, made her want to explain herself. Another pause. Clara James. Wait, you were let go during the restructuring last quarter in Dr. Mason's department. A chill ran down Clara James's spine. Yes. How did you... I'm Sebastian Cole, CEO of Meridian. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Sebastian Cole, the mysterious CEO who everyone talked about but few had actually met. He'd taken over the company 2 years ago and immediately began making changes, some popular, others less so. The layoffs had been part of his strategic realignment, according to the corporate email. Clara James had received alongside her termination notice. Mr. Cole, I'm sorry for the confusion. I'll let you go so you can reach Sophie. Wait, he said quickly. Clara James. I remember your file. Exceptional performance reviews specialized in patient coordination for oncology. Dr. Mason fought hard to keep you. Clara James blinked in surprise. The CEO had reviewed her file personally. That's correct. And yet you were let go. His voice had taken on a thoughtful quality, an oversight in our restructuring algorithm. Numbers don't always tell the full story. An awkward silence fell between them. Clara James didn't know how to respond. Was the CEO of a major healthcare company actually apologizing to her? And what about Sophie and her ultrasound, Mr. Cole? About Sophie. Yes, of course, I should try to reach her. He cleared his throat. But before I go, Miss Watt James, are you currently employed? The question caught her off guard. No, I'm still looking. The healthcare job market is tight right now. It is, he agreed. But as it happens, I'm in need of an executive assistant, someone with healthcare experience and exceptional organizational skills. Would you be interested in interviewing for the position? Clara James nearly dropped her phone. You don't even know me. I know your work record. I know Dr. Mason's assessment of your abilities. That's enough to warrant an interview at least. He paused. Unless you're no longer interested in working for Meridian after how things ended, it was a fair question. Clara James had spent weeks angry at the company, at the faceless executives who had decided her job was dispensable, but her mother, Laura Anderson's treatments weren't getting any cheaper and pride wouldn't pay the bills. I would be very interested, Mr. Cole. Excellent. Can you come to the main office today at 2 p.m. 20th floor? Tell security you're there to see me. Before she could respond, a notification chime sounded on his end of the call. Ah, he said, his voice changing. Sophie just texted me. Apparently she sent her ultrasound to me by mistake. It was meant for her husband. Mystery solved. He chuckled. Sometimes mistakes lead to unexpected opportunities, don't they, Mr. James? I'll see you at 2. The call ended and Clara James stood motionless in her kitchen trying to process what had just happened. A wrong number had somehow led to a job interview with the CEO of Meridian Healthcare, the very company that had laid her off 3 months ago, as she rushed to her closet to find something appropriate to wear. Clara James' phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, the same one that had just called her. Miss Pim. James. One more thing. The position pays $95,000 annually, with full benefits effective immediately upon hiring. I believe that's substantially more than your previous compensation. Looking forward to our meeting. Sebastian Cole. Clara James sat down hard on the edge of her bed, staring at the message. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in real life. Wrong numbers didn't lead to life-changing job offers from powerful CEOs. Yet 3 hours later, she found herself stepping into the gleaming lobby of Meridian Healthcare's headquarters, her heart pounding as she approached the security desk. The guard checked her ID, made a quick call, and then directed her to a private elevator. Mr. Cole is expecting you, Miss James, he said with a nod of respect that she'd never received during her previous time at the company. As the elevator climbed toward the 20th floor, Clara James couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite adding up. Why would the CEO personally call an employee about an ultrasound? Why was he so quick to offer her an interview with a salary already determined based on a wrong number? And why did she have the distinct impression that Kimwa. Sebastian Cole had recognized her name immediately, long before he'd mentioned reviewing her file. The elevator doors opened directly into a sleek reception area, where a professional-looking woman greeted her with a warm smile. Miss James. Welcome back to Meridian. I'm Saw Claire, Mr. Watcha Cole's current assistant. He's asked me to show you in right away. As Clara James followed on Claire toward a set of imposing double doors, she couldn't help but wonder what she was walking into and whether this mistake might turn out to be the best wrong number she'd ever answered. The double doors to Sebastian Cole's office swung open, revealing a space that defied Clara James's expectations. Instead of the sterile, minimalist design favored by most executives, his office was warm and inviting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, but it was the wall of photographs that caught her attention. Patients of all ages smiling, many alongside medical staff in Meridian uniforms. Mr. James, please come in. Sebastian Cole rose from behind his desk, extending his hand. He was younger than she'd imagined, perhaps in his early 40s, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples and keen blue eyes that studied her with unnerving intensity. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Mr. Cole. Clara James said, shaking his hand firmly despite her nerves. Please call me Sebastian. He gestured toward a comfortable seating area near the windows. I prefer to conduct interviews in a more relaxed setting, if that's all right with you. As they settled into the chairs, Clara James noticed a folder on the table between them. Her employee file, she realized with a start. It was considerably thicker than she would have expected. I took the liberty of reviewing your complete employment history with us after our call. Sebastian Cole explained, following her gaze. Your record is even more impressive upon closer inspection. 5 years with Meridian, consistently excellent performance reviews, and several commendations from patients in the oncology department. Clara James shifted uncomfortably. If my record was so impressive, why was I let go? The direct question seemed to please him. Fair point. The truth is, the restructuring was handled primarily through analytics. The algorithm identified departments that could be streamlined, and unfortunately, your position was flagged as redundant. He leaned forward. It was a mistake, one of many I've been working to correct by personally calling employees about ultrasound images. The words slipped out before Clara James could stop them, and she immediately regretted her boldness. To her surprise, Sebastian Cole laughed. No, that was genuinely a mix-up. Sophie Lane is our HR director, and apparently she was trying to send her first ultrasound to her husband. Ryan. She's only just found out she's pregnant. His expression sobered. But it did make me realize how disconnected I've become from the people who make this company work. He stood and walked to the wall of photographs. When I took over Meridian 2 years ago, it was on the verge of bankruptcy. The previous leadership had prioritized profits over patients, and we were losing both. I made difficult decisions to save the company, including the restructuring that cost you your job. Clara James remained silent, watching him carefully. There was genuine regret in his voice, but also something else, a determination that seemed deeply personal. What I didn't anticipate, he continued, was how algorithms and analytics would fail to capture the human element of our work. We lost good people, people like you, and it's affected our patient care. He turned back to face her. That's why I need someone like you as my executive assistant. Someone who understands healthcare from the ground up, who can help me reconnect with what matters most in this business, people. It sounded rehearsed, like something from a corporate mission statement, but the intensity in his eyes suggested sincerity. Still, Clara James couldn't quite shake her suspicion. Why me specifically? There must be dozens of qualified candidates with similar backgrounds. Sebastian Cole returned to his seat, considering her for a moment before responding. Your file mentions that your mother is a patient in our oncology department. Laura Anderson, stage 3 breast cancer, currently undergoing experimental treatment under Dr. Lewis. Clara James stiffened. Yes. What does that have to do with this position? Everything. Sebastian Cole's voice softened. During my review of departments most affected by our cuts, oncology stood out. Patient satisfaction scores have dropped significantly in the past 3 months. When I investigated further, I discovered that one of the key factors was the loss of an administrative assistant who had been exceptionally skilled at coordinating complex care schedules and making patients feel supported. He tapped her file. That was you, Clara James. Patients mentioned you by name in their feedback after you left. The nice young woman who always remembered my grandchildren's names. The assistant who found me a ride when my son couldn't pick me up. The only person who could explain my insurance coverage in words I could understand. Clara James felt a lump forming in her throat. She'd always tried to go above and beyond for the patients, especially those like her mother, Laura Anderson, who were fighting for their lives while navigating the labyrinthine healthcare system. So this isn't really about being your executive assistant, is it? She asked quietly. Sebastian Cole smiled, perceptive. The title is executive assistant to the CEO, but a significant portion of your role would involve implementing a new patient advocacy program. I want to start with oncology and eventually expand throughout the hospital. Who better to help design it than someone who understands both the administrative side and the patient experience for the first time since entering his office? Clara James felt her skepticism begin to fade. This made sense. It explained both the generous salary and why he'd been so quick to offer her the position. And my mother, Laura Anderson, chose treatment. I need to be honest, Mr. Cole. One of my biggest concerns since being laid off has been how to afford her care. Sebastian Cole nodded solemnly. I anticipated that question. As part of your compensation package, Meridian would cover any treatments for your mother not already included in her insurance plan, including the experimental therapy. Clara James' breath caught. The experimental treatment alone cost thousands of dollars per month, money she simply didn't have. That's extraordinarily generous. It's good business, Sebastian Cole countered, though his expression remained compassionate. Meridian should take care of its own. That includes the families of our employees, he paused. There's something else you should know. Clara James. She tensed, waiting for the catch, the fine print that would make this opportunity less miraculous than it seemed. Your mother's oncologist. Dr. Lewis was my wife's doctor as well. The revelation hung in the air between them. Clara James searched his face, understanding dawning slowly. Your wife had cancer. Sebastian Cole's gaze drifted to a small silver frame on his desk, the only personal item in the otherwise professional space. Julia Grace was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 4 years ago. She fought harder than anyone I've ever known, but we lost her just before I took over Meridian. He met Clara James Tonk's eyes again. That's why I bought the company, to change it from the inside. Suddenly, the wall of patient photos made sense. The personal interest in the oncology department, the determination to fix the mistakes made during restructuring. I'm so sorry. Clara James said softly. I had no idea. Most people don't. The board thought it would appear as a conflict of interest if my personal connection became public knowledge. He straightened in his chair, visibly pulling himself back to the present. But I wanted you to understand why this position and finding the right person for it matters so much to me. Clara James felt as though she was seeing Sebastian Cole clearly for the first time. Not as the cold corporate CEO who had authorized her layoff, but as a man with his own painful history trying to create meaning from loss. When can you start? He asked, his professional demeanor returning. The question caught her off guard. Don't you want to ask me more interview questions? Check my references. Sebastian Cole smiled. I've already spoken to Dr. Mason and reviewed your entire work history. But if you need more convincing, he slid a document across the table. This is the preliminary outline for the patient advocacy program. I'd value your input on what's missing. As while Clara James scanned the document, her administrative experience kicked in. She could already see gaps, areas where patients would fall through the cracks, processes that would create more bureaucracy instead of less. This needs work, she said without thinking, then glanced up in alarm at her own candor. Sebastian Cole. Smile widened. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. So again, when can you start? A week ago. Clara James would have jumped at this opportunity without hesitation. Now, despite everything she'd learned, a small voice of caution remained. I'd like to start Monday, she said carefully. But I have one condition. Sebastian Cole raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued rather than offended. Which is, I want to speak with Sophie Lane before accepting the position. His expression revealed nothing, but Clara James thought she detected a flicker of something. Surprise, perhaps, or respect in his eyes. May I ask why? Because this all started with her ultrasound and a wrong number. Clara James replied steadily. And before I commit to this position, I'd like to make sure that part of the story checks out. For a moment. Sebastian Cole simply studied her, his face unreadable. Then he reached for his phone. Claire, could you ask Sophie Lane to join us in my office? Yes, right away. He ended the call and turned back to Clara James. She'll be here in a few minutes. I appreciate your thoroughness, Miss James. It's another quality that makes you perfect for this role. As they waited for Sophie Lane to arrive, Clara James couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important, some piece of the puzzle that would explain why Sebastian Cole, CEO of Meridian Healthcare, had taken such a personal interest in her return to the company. The knock on the door came sooner than Clara James expected. Sophie Lane entered with the confident stride of an executive, her stylish business attire unable to completely disguise the subtle curve of her abdomen. Her professional smile faltered momentarily when she spotted Clara James. Clara James. I didn't expect to see you here. Sophie Lane said genuine surprise in her voice as she crossed the room to shake Clara James's hand. It's good to see you again, Sophie. Thank you for coming, Sebastian Cole said, gesturing for her to join them. I'm in the process of hiring Miss Tachon James as my new executive assistant, and she had a question about something that happened this morning. Sophie Lane looked between them, confusion evident on her face. Of course, how can I help? Clara James felt suddenly awkward. Put into words, her suspicions seemed paranoid, even ridiculous. This morning, Mr. Count Cole called me by accident thinking I was you. He mentioned receiving an ultrasound image that you'd sent him. Recognition dawned on Schwarz. Sophie Lane's face followed by a flush of embarrassment. Oh, that was such a mortifying mistake. I was trying to send it to my husband, Ryan, and somehow selected Sebastian's contact instead. She laughed nervously. I nearly died when I realized what I'd done. I sent him a text right away to explain, which I received. Sebastian Cole confirmed right after discovering I'd called the wrong number trying to reach you. The explanation matched exactly what Sebastian Cole had told her earlier. Clara James felt a wave of relief followed immediately by embarrassment at her suspicion. I'm sorry for asking, she began. Sophie Lane waved her off. No, it's completely understandable. It sounds like a strange coincidence. She glanced at Sebastian Cole. And knowing how our CEO operates, I can imagine it might have seemed orchestrated. Sebastian Cole had the grace to look slightly abashed. I have been known to take unconventional approaches to recruitment, like the time you accidentally spilled coffee on Dr. Michaels at that conference just so you could introduce yourself. Sophie Lane teased, clearly comfortable enough with her boss to poke fun at him. That was genuinely an accident. Sebastian Cole protested, though his smile suggested otherwise. The easy rapport between them further eased Clara James's concerns. This didn't feel like a performance for her benefit. Well, I should get back to work. Sophie Lane said, We have orientation for new hires this afternoon. She paused, looking at Clara James. Perhaps I'll be seeing you there on Monday. Clara James glanced at Sebastian Cole, who raised an expectant eyebrow. The last of her reservations melted away. Yes, I believe you will. After all, Sophie Lane left. Sebastian Cole extended his hand. Welcome to Meridian Healthcare, Miss Wamu. James. Or rather, welcome back. Thank you, Mr. Saul. Cole. I look forward to working with you. They shook hands, the agreement sealed. I'll have Claire email you all the necessary paperwork and details about Monday. He walked her to the door and Clara James. I admire your caution. It's a quality that will serve us both well. As Clara James rode the elevator down to the lobby, her mind whirled with everything that had happened. In the span of 6 hours, she'd gone from unemployed and desperate to having a high-paying job with benefits that would cover her mother. Laura Anderson's treatments. It felt surreal, like the plot of a movie rather than her actual life. Outside the Meridian building, the spring sunshine warmed her face as she called her mother to share the news. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Laura Anderson's voice, though weakened by treatments, carried genuine joy. I always said things happen for a reason. Maybe you're right, Mom. Clara James replied, smiling, as she hailed a taxi. I should be finished with the paperwork soon. I thought I'd stop by the hospital afterward to celebrate. Actually, I'm having a good day. Dr. Lewis Malto said I could go home this afternoon if my numbers stay stable. Why don't you come to the house instead? I'll order from that Thai place you like. Sounds perfect. I'll see you in a couple of hours. Clara James spent the next hour at a coffee shop methodically completing the electronic onboarding forms Claire had already sent to her email. The efficiency impressed her. Sebastian Cole clearly didn't waste time once decisions were made. Among the standard employment documents was a detailed description of her role. As Sebastian Cole had explained, she would split her time between traditional executive assistant duties and developing the new patient advocacy program. The latter would involve considerable autonomy and the authority to implement changes across departments. Far more responsibility than she'd had in her previous position. Just as she finished the last form, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss James. Sebastian Cole. Here. One more thing. I've arranged temporary parking for you in the executive garage until your permanent pass is ready. The code is 5429. See you Monday. Clara James stared at the message. How had he gotten her number? She hadn't included it on any of the forms yet. She quickly scrolled through their earlier conversation, confirming that she had never given it to him during their call either. A prickle of unease returned. She considered texting back to ask, then decided against it. It was probably in her old employee records. Still, the coincidences were beginning to pile up in ways that made her slightly uncomfortable. When she arrived at her mother, Laura Anderson's modest bungalow later that afternoon, she found Laura Anderson settled on the couch with a colorful knit blanket draped over her legs. Despite the weight loss and the headscarf covering her hair loss, her mother's eyes were bright with excitement. Tell me everything, Laura Anderson insisted as Clara James unpacked the Thai food containers. How did this miracle job offer happen? Clara James recounted the strange sequence of events, the wrong number, the ultrasound mix-up, the interview that wasn't really an interview. As she spoke, her mother's expression shifted from joy to something more cautious. And you're sure this is legitimate? Laura Anderson asked. It all seems rather convenient. That's what I thought, too. Clara James admitted, handing her mother a plate of pad thai. But I spoke with Sophie Lane, the woman whose ultrasound started this whole thing, and her story matched exactly what Sebastian Cole told me. Besides, it's Meridian Healthcare. It's not like it's some sketchy startup. Laura Anderson nodded slowly. And this CEO he's offering to cover my treatments as part of your compensation. Yes. Apparently his wife died of breast cancer a few years ago. That's why he bought Meridian in the first place. He wants to improve patient care, especially in oncology. His wife. Laura Anderson's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What was her name? Julia Grace, I think. Why? A strange expression crossed Laura Anderson's face. Do you remember when I first started treatment, there was a woman who used to sit next to me during chemotherapy? Julia Grace. We became friendly. She'd bring crossword puzzles for us to solve together while the drugs dripped. She set her fork down. She passed away about 2 years ago. Clara James felt a chill run through her. Did she ever mention her husband Jack? She called him Jack. Said he was some kind of financial investor. Laura Anderson's brow furrowed. I think I met him once or twice when he came to pick her up. Tall man, dark hair with a bit of gray, very devoted to her. The description matched. Sebastian Cole, perfectly. Clara James. His mind raced trying to process this new information. If Sebastian Cole's wife had been her mother's chemo companion, then he must have known who Clara James was all along. But why not mention the connection? Mom, did you ever talk about me to Salto? Julia Grace, about my job at Meridian. Laura Anderson. Thought for a moment. I'm sure I did. I was so proud when you got that position. And I probably talked about how helpful you were with all my medical paperwork. She frowned slightly. Clara James. What are you thinking? I'm thinking there's more to this job offer than Sebastian Cole is telling me. Clara James said slowly. The wrong number call this morning. I don't think it was a coincidence at all. But the HR woman confirmed it was a mistake, didn't she? Yes. But what if Sophie Lane was in on it? What if Sebastian Cole engineered the whole thing even as she said it? Clara James realized how paranoid it sounded. Why would the CEO of a major healthcare company go to such elaborate lengths to hire her specifically? Laura Anderson reached across the table to take her daughter's hand. Sweetheart, sometimes good things happen for simple reasons. Maybe Sebastian Cole remembered you from Julia Grace treatments and recognized your name when the layoffs happened. Maybe he feels guilty about letting you go when his wife's friend's daughter was affected. Maybe. Clara James conceded, though doubt lingered. But I can't shake the feeling that there's something he's not telling me. Her mother squeezed her hand. Then find out what it is. You've always been good at getting to the truth of things. Just don't let suspicion rob you of what could be a wonderful opportunity. Later that night, after making sure her mother was comfortably settled, Clara James sat at her laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating her determined face. If there was more to the story of Sebastian Cole's interest in her, she would uncover it before Monday. She began by searching for information about Julia Grace, finding a touching obituary that mentioned her brave battle with breast cancer and her marriage to Sebastian Cole, who purchased Meridian Healthcare in her honor. The timeline matched what Sebastian Cole told her. Next, she looked into the company's financial records since Sebastian Cole's takeover. True to his word, Meridian had been struggling before his purchase, and he'd implemented significant changes, including the restructuring that had cost Clara James her job. But the most recent quarterly report showed a remarkable turnaround, with patient satisfaction scores climbing and financial stability returning. Everything checked out. Yet her instincts continued to whisper that she was missing something important. As midnight approached, Clara James found herself scrolling through Meridian's press releases from the past year. One headline caught her eye. Meridian Healthcare launches Breakthrough Cancer Research Initiative in partnership with Cole Foundation. The article, dated just 3 weeks ago, detailed a major research project focused on developing new treatments for aggressive breast cancers, funded entirely by the Cole Foundation, a private charity established by Sebastian Cole in his late wife's memory. And there, in the final paragraph, was the missing piece. The initiative will be led by Dr. Lewis, who previously treated Mrs. Cole, and will build upon promising research begun in clinical trials last year. Trials that have shown particular success in patients with genetic profiles similar to the late Mrs. Kwok Cole's. Clara James stared at the screen, the truth dawning with startling clarity. Her mother, Laura Anderson, was part of those clinical trials under Dr. Lewis. Trials funded by Sebastian Cole, designed to develop treatments that might have saved his wife if discovered sooner. Laura Anderson wasn't just any patient. She was a test subject for the treatment. Sebastian Cole was passionate about advancing a treatment that might help countless women in the future. Clara James had just agreed to work directly for the man funding it all. Monday morning arrived with a clarity Clara James hadn't felt in months. After a weekend of research and reflection, she'd made her decision about Sebastian Cole and the position at Meridian Healthcare. As she rode the elevator to the 20th floor, she rehearsed what she would say when she saw him. The doors opened to reveal Claire, packing her desk carefully, placing framed photos into a cardboard box. "Good morning, Clara James." Claire greeted her warmly. "Mr. Cheung Cole is expecting you. He's asked that you go right in." "You're leaving?" Clara James asked, surprised by the immediate transition. Claire smiled. "Being promoted, actually. Director of Administrative Services. A new position Sebastian Cole created. I'll be overseeing the implementation of the patient advocacy program across departments once you've designed it." She lowered her voice. "Between us, I think he's been planning this restructuring for months. Your arrival was the final piece that aligned with us Clara James's discoveries." Sebastian Cole didn't leave anything to chance, including apparently her recruitment. She thanked Claire and approached the imposing double doors with renewed determination. Sebastian Cole was standing at the windows when she entered, gazing out at the city below. He turned at the sound of the door, his expression brightening. "Clara James, welcome. I trust you had a restful weekend." He gestured to a sleek desk positioned near his own. "Your workstation is ready. I thought we'd start by reviewing the patient advocacy framework together." "Before we begin," Clara James said firmly, "I need to ask you something." Sebastian Cole's smile faltered slightly, but he nodded. "Of course. Did you know my mother was Julia Grace's friend from chemotherapy when you offered me this job?" The question hung between them. Sebastian Cole's expression shifted through surprise, consideration, and finally resignation. "Yes," he admitted. "I recognized your name immediately during our call, so the wrong number wasn't a coincidence." Clara James pressed. "You orchestrated the whole thing." Sebastian Cole sighed and moved to the seating area, indicating for her to join him. "Not exactly. The mix-up with Sophie Lane's ultrasound was genuinely an accident. But when I realized I had called you instead of her, yes, I saw an opportunity and took it." "Why the elaborate charade? Why not just call and offer me the position directly? Would you have accepted?" Sebastian Cole countered. "If the CEO who authorized your layoff suddenly called with a too-good-to-be-true job offer, wouldn't you have been suspicious?" He had a point. Clara James would have assumed there was a catch, or that he wanted something she couldn't provide. Besides, he continued, "I needed to see how you would handle an unexpected situation. Your response, thoughtful, cautious, yet open to possibility, confirmed what I already believed about you. Based on what my mother's stories, my employment record, both. Sebastian Cole acknowledged. Julia Grace spoke highly of Laura Anderson's daughter, who worked at Meridian and helped navigate the healthcare maze. When I took over the company and reviewed staff during restructuring, I recognized your name but didn't make the connection immediately. By the time I realized who you were, the layoff decisions had been implemented, and you didn't reverse it. I considered it. But then I saw an opportunity for something better than simply reinstating your previous position. He leaned forward intently. Clara James, what happened to you? A dedicated employee who genuinely cared about patients being laid off due to an algorithm exemplifies everything wrong with how healthcare is managed today. I wanted you not just back at Meridian, but in a position to help change the system. Clara James processed his words, finding the explanation plausible yet still incomplete. And my mother. Laura Anderson's experimental treatment, the one funded by your foundation. Sebastian Cole didn't seem surprised that she'd discovered this connection. Yes. Laura Anderson is enrolled in trials developed from research that might have helped. Julia Grace, if we'd had more time. The treatment shows remarkable promise, particularly for patients with genetic profiles similar to Julia Grace and your mother's. So my mother is valuable to your research. Clara James said the words sharper than she'd intended. Every patient in the trial is valuable. Sebastian Cole corrected gently. But I won't pretend there isn't a personal element to this for me. Laura Anderson was kind to watch Julia Grace during the darkest period of her life. Supporting her treatment now feels like honoring Julia Grace's memory. He paused. That said, your mother's participation in the trial is completely separate from your employment. Whether you accept this position or not, her place in the program is secure. Clara James studied him carefully, looking for signs of deception. Instead, she found only earnest intensity, the same expression she'd noticed during their interview when he spoke about changing Meridian from within. There's one more thing you should know, Sebastian Cole added. The patient advocacy program wasn't my idea originally. It was Julia Grace. He reached for a leather portfolio on the table and withdrew a handwritten letter carefully preserved in a clear protective sleeve. This was part of a letter Julia Grace wrote to me in her final weeks. I'd like you to read it. Clara James hesitated before accepting the deeply personal document. The handwriting was shaky but determined. Jack, when I'm gone, I need you to promise me something. The hardest part of this journey hasn't been the pain or even facing mortality. It's been the feeling of helplessness within a system that's supposed to heal. No patient should have to fight both cancer and bureaucracy. If you really go through with buying Meridian, create something new. A program where patients have advocates within the system. Real people who understand both the medical and human sides of healthcare. Laura Anderson's daughter at Meridian seems to do this instinctively. Find more people like her. Build something that makes the unbearable a little more bearable for those who come after me. Clara James carefully returned the letter, a lump forming in her throat. I had no idea. Few people do. Sebastian Cole said quietly. I've spent 2 years preparing Meridian for this transformation, cutting costs, where possible improving efficiency, building the financial foundation needed to support patient-centered innovations that don't immediately generate profit. He met her eyes directly. I need someone who understands. Julia Grace is vision from the inside out. Someone who's lived both sides of healthcare as a provider and as family to a patient. The pieces finally aligned in Clara James's mind, forming a picture more complex, but ultimately more hopeful than she'd imagined. Sebastian Cole hadn't manipulated her into taking this position out of charity or obligation to her mother. He truly believed she was the right person to help implement a vision born from his wife's suffering. A vision that could transform patients' experiences at Meridian and perhaps beyond. So, Sebastian Cole said, watching her carefully, "Now that you know everything, are you still interested in the position?" Clara James took a deep breath. "Yes, but with one condition." "Name it." "Complete transparency moving forward. No more orchestrated coincidences or hidden motivations. If we're going to work together on something this important, I need to know you're being straight with me." Sebastian Cole extended his hand. "Agreed. Partners in transformation." "Partners." Clara James confirmed, shaking his hand with newfound confidence. 6 months later, Clara James stood at the podium in Meridian's largest conference room, addressing the assembled department heads and medical staff. Behind her, a screen displayed the logo for the newly launched Julia Grace Patient Advocacy Program. Today marks the official implementation of a program that reimagines how we support patients through their healthcare journey. She began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Over the past 6 months, we've piloted this approach in oncology with remarkable results. Patient satisfaction scores have increased by 38%. Treatment compliance has improved by 42%, and perhaps most importantly, patients report feeling seen and supported as people, not just medical cases. From the front row, Sebastian Cole nodded encouragingly. Beside him sat Laura Anderson, now in remission following the successful completion of her treatment protocol. The experimental therapy funded by the Keystone Cole Foundation had proven so effective that it was being fast-tracked for broader clinical trials. Starting next month, every department at Meridian will have dedicated patient advocates, trained not just in medical administration, but in empathetic communication and navigation of healthcare systems. Clara James continued, "These advocates will serve as bridges between patients, medical teams, and administration, ensuring that no one feels lost or forgotten within our walls." As she detailed the implementation plan she'd spent months developing, Clara James couldn't help but reflect on the strange path that had led her here. A wrong number, an ultrasound meant for someone else, a connection between two women knighted by the same devastating disease, all converging to create something meaningful from tragedy. After the presentation, as staff members approached with questions and congratulations, Sebastian Cole made his way to her side. "Julia Grace would be proud," he said quietly. "This is exactly what she hoped for. I think she'd be proud of both of us." Clara James replied, "Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected beginnings." Later that evening, as Clara James helped her mother, Laura Anderson, into her apartment for their weekly dinner tradition, Laura Anderson squeezed her hand. "You know, when I was sitting in those chemotherapy sessions with Julia Grace, complaining about how confusing all the paperwork was, I never imagined her husband would one day give my daughter a job that would change things for patients everywhere." She smiled, the color in her cheeks a welcome sign of her returning health. "It's like she's still helping people through both of you." Clara James thought about the chain of events that had led her here. From the devastation of losing her job to the uncertainty of that strange phone call, to discovering her purpose in transforming patient care. What had begun with a simple mistake, answering a call about an ultrasound that wasn't hers, had blossomed into something far more significant than she could have imagined. "Mom," Clara James said, setting plates on the table for their meal. "Remember how you always said things happen for a reason?" Laura Anderson nodded, her eyes twinkling. "And was I right?" Clara James thought of Sebastian Cole, of Julia Grace's letter, of the patients whose lives were already changing because of the advocacy program. She thought of her mother's remission and the treatments that would help countless other women facing the same diagnosis. "Yes," she said softly. "I believe you were." As they sat down to dinner, Clara Jamestown's phone buzzed with a text message from Sebastian Cole. "Just received the board's approval for Phase 2 funding. The Julia Grace Patient Advocacy Program is officially expanding to all 5 Meridian hospitals across the state. None of this would be possible without you. Thank you for answering that call." Clara James smiled as she read the message. Some wrong numbers, it seemed, were exactly right.